Greetings, technology enthusiasts. I am Chandrahas and I am delighted to be here with you representing CyberBrainer. Do you not believe that the technology sector is advancing at an unprecedented rate, making this an opportune moment to acquire the skills that will facilitate your progress? With CyberBrainer, we are empowering you to take control of your own future. At CyberBrainer, we do not merely impart your interests. We assert that information is power, yet it is the application of knowledge that distinguishes you. Our courses are meant to equip you with essential skills, whether you are pursuing data science, understanding artificial intelligence, or delving into cybersecurity. Let us commence the session and seize the future today. Thank you. Let's examine Guidewire, a cutting edge insurance program and its uses for accelerating insurance processes.
Was there an upgrade? We'll see what is the issue. Generally, it happens when it is trying to create a new instance of the database at the backend, right? Then only it will throw this error if something goes wrong during trying to create a new instance of that particular database. But I don't think generally it comes when we are changing this extension properties, right? Incrementing this, generally it appears like this. I'm thinking it will not come in your case. Database upgrade is in the software. Last upgrade phase and the database must be restored to 2 servers. Do one thing, clear this, go to your file structure where you have kept your database. Sorry, where you have kept your cleaning up. Go to guide. Guide by 10 means previous parent folder. Go to the C drive. Is there any temp folder here? That will be in users, right? It should be in tmp. It will be there in C. I think your DB drop has happened. DB, something went wrong in the DB. Is there any tmp folder here? No, right? Go to the no. No, it will not be here. Guide by 10 true, cleaning up. No, right. We'll do DB drop then. To do DB drop, just a second. Deep drop. Cannot, you can see cannot delete file not found. What is the error cannot delete? DB file guide by 10. Have you deleted it manually, that temp file? No, I did not. Go to that repository which it is telling. Not. Guide by 10 training up /db. Yeah. Do one thing. Delete this temp folder here. Here it is. We'll do one thing. We'll manually delete the entire DB folder. Manually delete and everything which is inside this, right? Everything deleted. WhatsApp. The action can close the studio and then delete. Delete these two. Now start the studio. And also, what is the command to see the files? Fetch as. If I want to, if an X file is present or not. Control Shift and for. Were you able to perform the lab sessions? Without means only the PC, means not the verification, because I know verification. You are facing this issue. But were you able to do it from the PCF files? No, I was kind of like I was talking here and then I was trying to see why it is failing and all those things. I did not get a chance, but I'll try to do it today. Now you just start the server. Yes, you can start the server. Always try to just run the server in debug mode. I always prefer that. Any particular reason? For development perspective, right, we'll be able to put the debug points and try the issue. Suppose some error is coming, it will come up with more loggers in the console. Got it. Now it started. Whenever there is this kind of issue, just delete the DB folder. Actually, it doesn't happen frequently. I don't know what has been done in your machine, that why it was occurring. I have something related to this. If your database is locked, then you can drop the database in your local and go ahead. But in real time, it doesn't happen. It's in the local setup only which happens. You can just start and load the sample data again. But we need to load the data again, because you have just done the DB drop, right? Shift up. To load the sample data, I need to go to the Alt-Shift-T. Beside administration, there would be a drop down. What are Gosu queries? Gosu queries is also similar to the SQL queries. We have to write the SQL scripts wherein we'll write some scripts and it will perform the task. Either it will perform the task to view the records of the table right with the select method, or rather we will have an update statement and insert row statement where we can update the database values. Similarly, we can do all these operations and we can write all these queries in Gosu as well. And in the back end, we are doing it from the coding standpoint, right? We are writing all these queries from the coding perspective. But in the back end, when we write such code for that particular Gosu code, right? In the back end, the corresponding SQL code is generated. SQL queries are generated in the back end and it gets executed. No matter, it's built on top of SQL, right? That's why SQL queries get generated in the back end. But we don't have to worry about all those SQL queries. We just have to worry about only Gosu queries. As a Guidewire developer, we just focus on the Gosu queries. A Gosu query will contain two types of objects. One is the query object and another one is the result object. What is the difference between the query object and the result object? I'll wish quick. First thing is query object. First step, this is the step 1 of creating a Gosu query. Step 1 is query object. And step 2 is result object. Take an example of the SQL script write. In an SQL script, you write something like select column name, like name from table name. And then you will write a where clause where something write. This is the SQL query. Suppose you want to write this type of query using Gosu, write what you will do. This select comes under the result object. Why do you select here in the Gosu query? Just to print the values, right? Just to print the values and table format that we can refer it. Similarly, a result object is used that we could get the result of whatever we are querying in the table. But the query object, this query object, whatever we are doing from here, we are specifying the table name here, right? We have to specify the table name in the query object and we are specifying the where clause. Clause is also different constraints we are specifying here, right? After the where clause, all those constraints need to be identified and need to be added in the query object. Only the select and the printing of the objects would be taken care in the result object. There are some syntaxes which will combine these two things, query and the result object, and we will be able to form this particular complete query in Gosu. I'll open Gosu Scratchpad to show you how our query object and result object look like. You go to Gosu Scratchpad. This is a main method, right? It works like a main method wherein you can, if you are doing some development, right, you can execute your code here and in the console the values get printed. If you want to do real-time changes, right, you can test your changes. You can test your code from the Gosu Scratchpad. Let's suppose my server is not yet started. I'll start my server. We have system.println write in the Java. Similarly, we have this print. We just use print and then under brackets we'll pass the string that it prints that string in the console. It will act like a main method and we can test our code. Similar like, let me give you an example. In string hello world, when I'm going to run this, I will run it in that once my server is upright, this button will be enabled. Running debug process. I'll click on this running debug process. Then my console will be appear in the down. We need the screen and I'll be sure I'll be able to see this statement. Whatever we give here, it will be presented in the console. Similarly, if you want to show the detail of AB contact entity, the rows of AB contact or AB person entity, right? We have many persons included in our database, right? I want to query the AB person entity. How I will query it? First, I will create an query object, right? I'll name it as query obj. This is the syntax to create. There is a package at gwood.api.database. .query. There is a class named query which will contain a method, and it's a static class. That's why we are not creating any object of it. We are directly calling it. Inside the query class we have this make method in which we have to pass on the entity name which we are going to query. B%. My query object is done. I've given the I'll also. Meanwhile, I'll also mention for reference here the corresponding SQL select star. Person. This is my corresponding SQL, and I'm writing the corresponding goes to query for this particular now. I need to run right now. Result object. I have the query object. I'll do query object dot select. There is a select method on this. I'll call this. My result object is also ready. Now this AB person would contain multiple rows, right? If I want to iterate on this part, this result object would also contain multiple rows of data, right? What I will do, I'll create a for loop. To iterate in the result object, it will result in the result object. Result object is A. It will contain the area of the AB person object, right? I'm iterating through each result and I'm printing the result. Just to show in the console, if I add the print statement, right, it will be appear in the console. And I can. If I suppose I want to print each and every field, then I have to just give with star dot. Sorry, not star. Which field you want me to print? I'll see in the result object cell phone, date of birth, first name. I'll print first name. First name. First name would be printed once I run this. My server is started or not. Debug is enabled. It is still starting. This is the query. Once it is. My server is not fully started yet, but debug is enabled. But let it start fully, then only we'll debug it. Now let's take an example of one more query. Sorry, we are just wearing first name here. Here also we'll select last. Person where we're here. We are adding the clause also. First name equal to something. We have to write this query. We'll have the same steps. We'll write a query object. Let me copy it. As I said right in our, I have defined it in the same name. I'll define it with some different name here. You can see I have told you right. If you want to add constraints, we have to add the constraints in the query object, not in the result object, right, after we pick up the entity. After we have given the entity details from where the query has to refresh the results, we will put the constraints like the dot. we'll see what are the constraints available. We have to compare right with the first name. I'll put compare. And in the first parameter, I need to give the field name, which I need to compare like a person. What is the field name? I will compare it with first name, right? First name, what should be the constraint? It should be equal to, right? There is a package named relopeware which will contain all the comparative operators. Let me check what equals. I have equals here in this low package. I have in the second parameter. I have given equals in the third parameter. I'll give the string. Oh, you can just see this, how we have written the compare statement here and how we are writing the compare statement here. Now this part is done. We have to take care of this part. Right. For this, we will write a result object equal query object.select. Again, it can be possible that it contains multiple results. We'll iterate it with the loop. And here we'll give some other things like, what do you want to get? All the records, all the columns in the particular result.star. Result.star would not give me. I'll tell you what dot star would give me if I want to show all the fields here, right? What I will do here is, I'll just let me comment it here. I'll just convert it into to list. I'm just converting into a collection of all these results to list. And I'll print this list correctly. To print the list, you just give the print list name. You go through. I'll just come. I just print the list. It will give me the complete list of items. Let me run this query first. I'll just make it like this. I'll run the first query first. Let's see what are the results. This is the console. You can see these are the results. It's the first name of all the person entity. What I'll do, I'll just comment it out and I'll just uncomment this one. But I might not have any result with the Lin. I need to change it. I'll change it with Johanna. The first name is Johanna. It will return all the results. Johanna Keck. You can see this area. This area contains only one element. Only first name and last name are there and AB contact for the particular record. You were asking about all the fields, all the columns. To print all the columns, we could be using sub. Let me see what we can use. Generally, we do not print all the columns. We'll specify from the GUI which all columns we need to specify. We'll specify it manually. We don't have any such feasibility here, where we can in one go, we can print all the columns. But if you want to see the backend query right for SQL query, you can see it like this. You can just whatever result object you have right till the select method. You can just print that directly. It will print the backend SQL query for you, which is running internally. No, I don't think we have such feasibility herein. The question is we are going against. We are selecting a table called AB person, but the object when you print, it's going against AB contact. It's going against AB contact. Why? Because in the backend we have only AB contact entity, right? And we have learned in the subtype of AB contact. And in backend we don't have any table named like A, B person physically in physical database. Right. We have discussed about that in local. If I want to see the database, H2 database, how do I do that? H2 doesn't have any like a SQL management server, is there, right? Studio is there? We don't have anything. As to database, we can see it from here, only we don't have any console where we can see the H2 database. But there is a feasibility where we can. If we don't want to use H2, right, we can use SQL as well. Just for the storing. If we want to use SQL, we have to define if we want to see those tables in the tabular format. The recommendation is to generate an SQL DB and connect that SQL DB instead of using the H2 DB. How it is done? I'll tell you. There is the database config.xml file. You have to first install the SQL database. Create the database name and then you need to give the connection logic here. Here you can see we have H2 database DB type is H2, right? And the URL also is of H2. That's why we have a database. But if you want to connect it with SQL, we can do it with SQL also. But there are many configurations which we have to do apart from this. One means while doing the SQL setup. But as to database comes default with the guide right for local development. It's recommended to use H2 database only for production support and all those stuff. Right. Generally, SQL database is used for production support projects. Even when working, you'll be working on H2 database only. Yes, in locally, we will be working in H2 database only. Because it comes in by default with the guideware, and that's why we use it. We use H2 database, but it can be SQL can also be configured. If you want to see everything in the tabular format, then we can configure SQL as well. In my current project, in my previous engagements also, we have in local we were using H2 only in development projects. That's how it is. This is pretty much about the query when you're making a join and all those things. I'll discuss it. We'll come to that again. First, let me tell you how to write an and constraints right here. What we have to do is we have to suppose we want to write an and constraint right here. Let me remove it. I want to write an and constraint on query object. I'll give query object dot com. This is first constraint. Second constraint with which I want to do, and it is not compare. I'll put last name. Sebastian. Now these two constraints are ended together. Because we have done it means we have mentioned it one by one. Whatever the result, object will be coming, it will come as a result of, and because it is an or this is and this is and but for because first it will filter out the results based on Jonah. Then on top of these results, it will filter out the results based on Sebastian. It is ending these two constraints together. But if we want to have our constraint, right, suppose we want to have this as our constraint. What we will write is, I'll write an or constraints. I'll write a query object dot or there is an or method which you, and then I'll give the just to say. I'll explain you what I'm doing. This is how I need to make it, or we are using the concept of blocks here. In query object or is a method in a query object which will take an expression in the parameter. Expression as in what? You can see here we have ELT. Sorry. Please do like, share and subscribe to our channel.